Inheritance of traits. Gregor Johann Mendel was a Czech monk who also studied pea plants. He conducted a series of experiments in which he crossed a purebred white flower with a purple flower pea plant. The results of this experiment helped Mendel define three laws of inheritance: the law of segregation, the law of independent assortment, and the law of dominance. Each of these laws shapes the physical and internal characteristics of an organism. Mendel's flower experiments. When Mendel crossed the white flower with the purple flower, he was surprised to discover that the offspring was not a mix of the two colors. In other words, wouldn't the result be a light creamy purple? No. Instead, the offspring was a deep purple flower. Why did this happen? The law of dominance. The basic units of inheritance are called genes. Each gene has a different versions called alleles or alleles. A child inherits two alleles for every trait, one from each parent. The alleles received from two parents may be identical or different. When the alleles are identical, they are called homozygous, from the Latin prefix homo, which means same. When the alleles are different, they are referred to as heterozygous, from the Latin prefix hetero, meaning different. The alleles you receive determine your genotype or your genetic makeup. They also affect your phenotype or your physical traits and characteristics. How does your genotype affect your phenotype? According to Mendel's law of dominance, alleles are either dominant or recessive. Take the case of the white and purple flowers. The white flowered parent passed on the allele for white color, and the purple flowered parent passed on the allele for purple color. Which allele was dominant? The allele for purple was dominant because the offspring was purple. The allele for white was recessive because it was overpowered by the dominant purple allele. It did not show up in the offspring at all. What combination of parents would have produced white flowers? If both parents had white flowers, then the offspring would be white. Recessive genes, then, can pass to the next generation when there are no dominant alleles present. If a child receives at least one dominant allele for a trait, then he or she will have the trait. The law of segregation. Each parent has two alleles for every trait. According to the law of segregation, the parent only passes one of these alleles along to the gamete or developing offspring. The allele that is chosen is random. For example, a parent who is heterozygous for a trait has an equal chance of passing along its dominant allele or its recessive allele. The law of independent assortment. During gamete formation, alleles separate independently from other pairs of alleles. This means that if you inherit a certain allele for one trait, it does not affect the other alleles you inherit. Under the law of independent assortment, endless combination of traits may be possible. You can see this in action with humans. After all, there are some people with curly hair and brown eyes, and other people with hair and blue eyes. Like most traits, the traits for hair color and eye color are inherited independently of each other. One does not depend on the other. Mendel's influence on biology. In the 19th century, Mendel's theories were considered controversial by many, and it wasn't until the early 20th century that his ideas were formally accepted. Mendel did just conduct one experiment to reach these conclusions about genetics. Between 1856 and 1863, he tested more than 5,000 pea plants in his lab. Mendel himself did not even realize how important his experiment would become. He thought his discoveries only applied to certain organisms. In the scientifically charged 20th century, though, it would become clear that Mendel's experiments were meaningful for all sexually reproduced offspring, from pea plants to people.